The bride wore Catherine's ring. It gleamed on Judith's left hand as she bent over the parish register on the morning of the 12th of June, 1817, the rose-cut diamond catching the pale light that
entered through the high church windows. One seed pearl was missing from the border. Catherine saw the small dark space at once.
She also saw the faint unevenness along the inner band when Judith turned her wrist to steady the quill, a roughness where two initials had once been softened but not entirely erased.
Cyril Bexley stood beside his new wife, smiling with the controlled satisfaction of a man who had secured precisely what he wanted.
When the clergyman indicated where he must sign, Cyril placed his wedding band beside the older ring and did not look toward the second pew. Catherine sat there beside Mrs.
Anne Moorfield, her mother's sister, while Sir Malcolm Chatterton occupied the family pew nearer the front. The distance was only a few yards. It felt like a public declaration.
"You're very pale," Mrs. Moorfield murmured. Catherine kept her eyes upon Judith's hand.
"I'm quite well. You don't have to pretend with me." Catherine's fingers closed around the ivory fan resting in her lap.
Its painted silk showed a moonlit garden in faded blues, and one outer guard was cracked but stable beneath her thumb.
Her mother had carried it for years, and had once said a lady required a fan for three purposes: cooling herself, concealing boredom, and preventing the world from seeing which remark had drawn blood.
"I'm not pretending," Catherine said. "I'm standing. The vows had already been spoken. The ring had been blessed."
Whatever had once existed between Catherine and Cyril could not be restored by exposing it now, nor did she want it restored.
That truth did not prevent the sight of her old future on Judith's hand from pressing against her ribs. 2 years earlier, Cyril had brought the ring to Catherine after a journey to Winchester.
He had placed it upon her finger in the east parlor at Chatterton Hall, and told her the old family gold suited her better than anything newly made.
He had spoken of patience, duty, and the day his prospects would be secure enough for a public announcement.
Now he signed his name as Viscount Somerton beside Judith's, and Catherine's initials survived only as scars beneath the gold.
A tall gentleman stood near the rear pillar, apart from the cluster of late-arriving guests. Catherine had not noticed him enter.
His coat was dark blue, cut with quiet precision, and silver touched the dark hair at his temples. He watched the register rather than the bridal flowers.
When Judith turned from the table and deliberately lifted her left hand to accept congratulations, his gaze moved from the ring to Catherine. He could not know what it meant.
Yet something in the steadiness of his attention suggested he had noticed that Cyril would not look at her. Catherine met the stranger's eyes for one brief moment. Neither smiled.
He inclined his head, not as though offering sympathy, but as though acknowledging that he had seen her standing where everyone else preferred to imagine she was comfortably seated.
By the time the wedding party reached Chatterton Hall, the June sun had burned through the morning haze.
White roses and myrtle crowded the entrance, their sweetness mingling with beeswax, warm stone, and the sharper scent of negus carried through the open doors.
Catherine had spent 6 weeks arranging the breakfast.
She had checked the linen, corrected the seating list, approved the musicians, counted the wine, and found rooms for guests whose plans had changed twice. None of that labor appeared beside her name.
Judith received praise for the elegance of the occasion. Sir Malcolm accepted praise for the generosity of the house. Catherine followed Mrs.
Moorfield into the gallery and found her place card missing from the family table beneath the windows.
A servant directed her instead to a small table near the terrace doors, beside a hard-of-hearing clergyman and a gentleman known to discuss fox hunting through every meal.
Catherine looked once at the family table. Her original chair remained there, but Judith's school friend now occupied it. "There must be a mistake," Mrs. Moorfield said. Judith approached before Catherine could answer. She had changed from her veil into a lace cap threaded with seed pearls. The old ring remained beside the wedding band. "There isn't," Judith said.
I moved Catherine's card. Mrs. Moorfield's face cooled. "Why?" Judith glanced toward Cyril, who was speaking with Sir Malcolm and 3 neighboring landowners. "Because the family table is already crowded, and because it seemed kinder to avoid unnecessary memories." Catherine looked at her sister.
The memories were present before you moved the card. Judith's smile tightened.
"Don't do this today. I have done nothing. Cyril joined them then.
though his attention settled upon Judith rather than Catherine. "The terrace table is cooler," he said.
"You'll be more comfortable there." Catherine had once known every change in his expression. Now she saw only the practiced calm of a man repeating an arrangement already approved elsewhere.
"I have only agreed to sit down," she replied. "You needn't explain it as a kindness." Cyril's eyes met hers at last, then moved away.
Across the gallery, the stranger from the church stood near a marble bust of a Roman senator. He had heard enough to understand that the place card had not been misplaced. Judith turned back toward her guests, satisfied that Catherine had not raised her voice. Catherine took the chair near the terrace. She opened her mother's fan and let it conceal the lower half of her face while conversation flowed around her. The fox-hunting gentleman began describing a hound's injured paw.
The clergyman asked twice whether she was a cousin of the bride. Catherine answered politely.
She did not look toward the family table again until a young maid, carrying a tray of negus, caught the edge of a chair.
One glass tipped, sending a red line across the white cloth near Judith's sleeve. The girl froze. Judith stepped back. Clumsy creature.
"Do you know what that linen cost?" The maid's face drained of color. The housekeeper had already begun moving toward her. Catherine rose before calculation could stop her.
"The fault was mine," she said. Every nearby voice quieted. Judith stared at her. "Yours?" I called to her as she passed. She turned too quickly. Catherine had done no such thing.
The maid looked at her with startled gratitude, then lowered her eyes. Sir Malcolm frowned.
"Then you should be more careful, Catherine." "Yes, father. The housekeeper took the girl away without dismissal, and servants replaced the cloth." Judith returned to receiving compliments.
No one thanked Catherine. She had not expected thanks. When she sat again, she found the stranger watching her. This time his expression had changed. Not pity. Pity was soft and often useless.
What she saw was attention sharpened into judgment, though the judgment was not directed at her. A few minutes later, he spoke quietly to the steward.
Catherine could not hear the words, but the steward looked toward her table, then toward Sir Malcolm. He approached the baronet and murmured something close to his ear.
Sir Malcolm's gaze flicked toward the stranger, then to Catherine. He shook his head once. The steward bowed and withdrew. The stranger became very still. Catherine understood.
He had asked that her place be restored. Her father had refused. Music rose from the far end of the gallery as the small ensemble prepared the first set. Chairs were moved. Younger ladies brightened.
Married women gathered near the walls to watch. Judith took Cyril's arm with the radiant certainty of a bride who believed every visible choice confirmed that she had been preferred.
Catherine closed her fan. At 31, she had learned not to expect invitations when society had already decided what role she occupied.
She would sit beside the terrace, endure the dance, and leave the room before anyone could praise her composure. Then the stranger stepped away from the marble bust.
He crossed the gallery without haste, but every person between them seemed to notice his direction. Judith's smile faltered. Cyril stopped speaking. Sir Malcolm lowered his glass.
The stranger did not look at any of them. He came directly toward Catherine.
He stopped before her with the composure of a man who had crossed the room because he intended to, not because the room had noticed. Up close, Catherine saw that he was older than Cyril by several
years, perhaps nearing 40, with dark hair touched by silver at the temples, and a reserve that might have seemed severe, if not for the intelligence in his eyes. He bowed.
"Miss Chatterton, may I have this dance?" For one suspended moment, Catherine heard only the last notes of the musicians tuning their instruments.
The fox-hunting gentleman beside her stopped in the middle of describing a hound's temper. Across the gallery, Judith's smile became fixed. Catherine kept both hands around her closed fan.
"You know who I am?" she asked. "I took the trouble to learn. Then you also know that asking me will be noticed." His gaze moved briefly over the gallery.
That appears to have happened already. A few guests looked away too late. The answer almost drew a smile from her, though caution returned before it fully formed.
You may find yourself drawn into a story that does not belong to you. Then perhaps the person at its center should be permitted some authority over how it is told. The words were quiet.
They carried no gallantry, only conviction. He extended one gloved hand and waited. He did not lean closer. He did not assume that her silence meant agreement. Catherine looked toward Mrs. Moorfield.
Her aunt's expression held concern, but also the smallest nod. Sir Malcolm stood near the family table, displeasure already gathering between his brows.
Judith watched as if Catherine's answer might disturb vows spoken only hours earlier. Cyril had turned from the men beside him, and was now observing the exchange with a frown.
That decided her more surely than encouragement could have done. Catherine placed her fan upon the table, rose, and laid her hand in the stranger's. "Yes," she said.
"You may." His fingers closed with careful firmness, steadying without claiming. He led her toward the forming lines of the first set. Conversation thinned behind them.
Catherine felt every step as a public declaration, though she had declared nothing beyond a willingness to cross a room. They had nearly reached their places when Cyril moved into their path.
He looked at the stranger without recognition, his manner courteous only because witnesses were present. "Miss Chatterton is fatigued," he said.
"The morning has been difficult for the family." The stranger did not release her hand. "Has it? She has had very little rest."
I am certain she would prefer to sit down. Instead of answering Cyril, the stranger turned to Catherine. Would you? The question was simple. No one had asked it all day.
Catherine met Cyril's gaze. Once she had mistaken his habit of speaking for her as intimacy. Now she saw only control made polished by practice. "No," she said.
"I would not." Something cold moved through Cyril's face before courtesy concealed it. "Of course. I only wished to spare you discomfort." "You have spared me quite enough," Catherine replied.
The stranger's thumb shifted once against the back of her glove. Not a caress, but an acknowledgement. He looked at Cyril.
"Then the matter is settled." Cyril stepped aside because refusing would have required a scene, and scenes were dangerous when one's history depended upon silence.
The musicians began a lively country set. Catherine was grateful for the structure. The figures, crossings, and measured distances gave her body instructions her thoughts lacked.
The stranger moved with disciplined ease. He did not pull too firmly when they joined hands or crowd her during the turns. Each time the pattern separated them, the watching faces returned.
Each time it brought them together, the room seemed to recede. "You dance well," he said when the figure allowed conversation. "I was taught well. That is not always the same thing, no."
"Some people are taught only how to appear accomplished. And you?" "I was taught that mistakes would inconvenience everyone else." His expression altered. "Not pity."
Catherine would have resented pity. It was recognition sharpened by disapproval directed somewhere beyond her.
That sounds less like instruction than a warning. In my family, the distinction is often decorative. His mouth curved. The brief smile transformed him.
"You have been kind enough not to ask my name," he said. "I assumed you would give it when you wished me to know it. Most people ask before accepting a dance. Most people know whom they are."
Accepting, and yet you accepted. Catherine completed a turn beneath his raised hand and faced him again.
"I decided a stranger could hardly make this day more uncomfortable than my relations have managed." His laugh was low and genuine. Several nearby dancers glanced toward them.
Heat rose beneath Catherine's skin, not entirely from embarrassment. She had forgotten what it was to speak, without measuring every word against the consequences for someone else.
"You are very certain I am harmless," he said. "I am certain you asked instead of instructing." The lightness left his face.
"That is a low standard. It has not often been met. The music carried them apart." As they crossed again, Catherine noticed movement near the family table.
The steward had approached Sir Malcolm and was speaking close to his ear. Sir Malcolm's expression changed with startling speed. First disbelief, then recognition.
His gaze snapped toward the dance floor and settled upon Catherine's partner. He said something to Cyril, who went very still.
Cyril looked more closely at the stranger, and the color in his face altered.
Catherine did not understand what had passed between them, but she understood that her father had just learned something important. The figure required her to turn.
When she faced the stranger again, his attention had moved to Judith's hand. The rose-cut ring flashed beside the wedding band. Catherine's gaze followed before she could prevent it.
The missing seed pearl caught the candlelight as a small dark space. Her step faltered. The stranger adjusted instantly, slowing half a measure so the figure remained graceful.
No one beyond the nearest couple appeared to notice. "Thank you," she murmured. "You recovered yourself. You allowed me time. That seems another low standard." She looked at him. "You noticed, too."
"Much.
So I have been told. Does it serve you well? Rarely in pleasant company. Perhaps pleasant company depends upon everyone agreeing not to notice the same things. His eyes held hers.
Through the next turn. Such as a misplaced place card, Catherine's breath caught. You saw. I also saw the steward attempt to correct it. My father did not permit him. Your father appears to.
Dislike correction. He dislikes it when witnesses are present. The music softened before the final figure.
Katherine realized she had said more to this stranger in one dance than she had intended to say to anyone that day. Yet he had not pressed her for explanation.
He had simply left room around the truth. You said a person should have authority over the story told about them, she said.
I did. Do you always believe that? I am trying to. The answer was less polished than she expected. It felt more honest because of it.
Trying? There are principles one learns only after failing to live by them. Katherine studied him.
That is an unusual confession from a man who has not given his name. Perhaps anonymity encourages candor, or cowardice, sometimes both. The final turn brought them side by side.
His hand met hers, steady and warm through the glove. For one brief instant, the noise of the gallery seemed to fall away. Then the music ended. He returned her to the edge of the dance floor rather than abandoning her among the whispers. He bowed over her hand without touching his lips to her glove.
Thank you, Miss Chatterton. You still have not told me your name. No, he said.
I have behaved very badly. Then perhaps I should be relieved the dance is over. I hope you are not. Before she could answer, Cyril approached with Sir Malcolm beside him.
Both men wore the strained expressions of people trying to determine how much deference was required before the room understood why.
Cyril bowed first, far lower than he had bowed to any guest that day. Your Grace, he said. The title moved through the nearby company like wind through leaves. Conversation stopped one by one.
Katherine looked from Cyril to the stranger. The man inclined his head, accepting the form of address without satisfaction. Sir Malcolm's color had changed.
I had not understood that His Grace the Duke of Westhaven had arrived, he said. That was intentional, the stranger replied. Frederick Kingsley.
The name struck Katherine with all the force of the silence around them. The Duke of Westhaven was among the highest-ranking peers in the county, master of Keldon Court, wealthier than Cyril and beyond Sir Malcolm's social command.
He was also known for ending an advantageous arranged match without explanation. Mothers called him difficult. Gentlemen called him proud. He had crossed Judith's wedding gallery to ask the discarded elder sister to dance. Judith came toward them, her new husband's ring bright, beside the older jewel.
Your Grace, she said, recovering enough to curtsy. Had we known you were coming, we would have received you properly. I was received, Frederick said. His gaze moved to Katherine.
Though not by the person who should have been seated at your family table. Judith's face tightened. Sir Malcolm stepped in before she could answer.
A small misunderstanding in the arrangements. Was it? Frederick asked. The question sounded mild. Sir Malcolm did not reply. Mrs.
Moorfield appeared at Catherine's side, and reclaimed the protective place affection and propriety allowed. Frederick bowed to her, then to Katherine.
I hope the remainder of your evening is less tiring than Lord Somerton feared. Katherine saw Cyril's jaw stiffen.
I believe it may be. Frederick turned as if to leave, but his attention caught once more on Judith's hand. The old ring had shifted against her glove.
Then he looked at Katherine, and the listening room seemed to fall away. His voice lowered so only she could hear.
Was that ring once yours? Katherine's fingers closed around the cracked guard of her mother's fan. She did not answer, not because the truth was uncertain.
Because too many people had spent 2 years depending upon her silence, and for the first time, someone had asked a question that might make silence impossible.
The Duke of Westhaven's calling card arrived before 11 the next morning, carried into the breakfast room on a silver salver that seemed to acquire unusual importance merely by bearing his name.
Sir Malcolm set down his coffee. Judith, dressed in a pale blue traveling gown for her departure later that day, looked at Cyril with immediate satisfaction.
He's come to pay his respects, she said. Naturally, Sir Malcolm replied.
A duke cannot attend a wedding breakfast and leave without acknowledging the bride and groom properly. Cyril folded his newspaper with deliberate calm.
You may wish to discuss the Hertford subscription. Katherine said nothing. She sat near the window beside Mrs. Moorfield, the morning light showing the fatigue beneath her eyes.
Her mother's ivory fan rested closed beside her plate. She had slept little. Each time she had begun to drift, Frederick's quiet question had returned. Was that ring once yours?
She had answered with silence, because silence had become instinct. Now his card lay upon the salver, and everyone in the room seemed determined to decide his purpose before he entered the house.
The butler returned. His Grace is waiting in the morning room, Sir Malcolm. Sir Malcolm rose. Tell him Lord and Lady Somerton will join him directly. The butler hesitated.
It was a small pause, but Catherine saw it. His Grace asked whether Miss Chatterton was receiving callers. Judith's expression changed first. Cyril's followed more slowly.
Sir Malcolm looked toward Catherine as though the answer ought to come from him. Miss Chatterton is not indisposed, he said. No, Catherine replied, setting down her napkin. She is not. Mrs.
Moorfield stood with her. I shall accompany you. Judith pushed back her chair. Surely father should receive him first. Father may receive him, Catherine said.
But his Grace asked whether I was receiving callers. The words were neither loud nor sharp. Their power came from requiring no permission. Sir Malcolm led the way to the morning room.
Judith and Cyril followed despite the impropriety of turning a call upon one lady into a family assembly. Frederick stood when they entered.
In daylight, he appeared less remote than he had beneath the candles, though no less controlled.
His coat was brown, his cravat simply tied, and his expression held none of the satisfaction another man might have taken from the attention his dance had caused.
He bowed first to Catherine, then to Mrs. Moorfield. Only afterward did he acknowledge the others. Miss Chatterton, Mrs. Moorfield. Your Grace, Catherine said.
I hope we have not kept you waiting. Not at all. His gaze rested briefly upon her face, as though confirming she had chosen to come. Sir Malcolm moved toward the chair nearest him.
He were pleased to receive your card.
Lord and Lady Somerton will not remain in Hampshire long, but I am certain they would be honored to discuss whatever matter brought you here. Frederick looked at him.
My business is with Miss Chatterton. Judith's hand tightened around the folds of her skirt. Cyril remained still beside the mantel. Sir Malcolm gave a short laugh. Of course.
A courtesy after the dance. Not entirely. Frederick turned to Catherine. I owe you an apology. The directness unsettled her more than gallantry would have done.
For what? For asking a private question in a public room. No one spoke. Catherine felt Judith's attention sharpen. You asked it quietly, she said.
Quietly is not the same as rightly. His gaze did not leave hers. I should not have presumed. Sir Malcolm intervened before she could answer.
There is no need to trouble Miss Chatterton over a trifle. The ring belongs to my younger daughter, as anyone may see. I did not ask whom it belongs to now, Frederick replied.
The distinction landed with perfect calm. Judith colored. Your Grace, Catherine has always been sentimental about old family pieces. It means nothing. Catherine turned toward her sister.
Do not answer for me. Judith fell silent, startled less by the rebuke than by the fact that Catherine had spoken it before witnesses. Frederick did not seize the opening. He waited. Mrs.
Moorfield seated herself near the open door, establishing the propriety everyone else seemed eager to forget. Catherine chose the chair opposite Frederick. Sir Malcolm remained standing.
Cyril moved closer to the mantel, placing distance between himself and the center of the room. The ring was once mine, Catherine said.
The admission was soft, yet it altered the air more completely than a raised voice could have done. Frederick's expression remained controlled. Judith's did not.
Catherine continued before anyone could interrupt. Mr. Bexley gave it to me in March of 1815. Cyril stared into the empty grate. Sir Malcolm's hand closed over the back of a chair.
There was no public announcement, Catherine said. The understanding was private. A youthful confusion, Sir Malcolm said.
Catherine, there is no purpose in giving it more weight than it possessed. She looked at him. It possessed enough weight for me to return a ring. His mouth hardened.
Frederick spoke before Sir Malcolm could answer. Was the understanding ended by mutual choice? Catherine looked at him.
The question carried no demand, but it opened a door she had kept barred for nearly 2 years.
Behind it stood her father's study, Judith's tears, Cyril's silence, and the sentence that had made refusal sound selfish. The family must remain intact. She could not step through all of it.
Not yet. It ended for the good of the family, she said. Frederick absorbed the answer without pretending it was complete. I see. Do you? Cyril asked from the mantel.
It was the first time he had spoken. Families make arrangements that outsiders often fail to understand. Frederick looked at him. Arrangements are generally easy to understand.
It is consent that is more often obscured. A faint line appeared beside Cyril's mouth.
Catherine was not forced. I did not say she was. Then perhaps this conversation has gone far enough, Sir Malcolm said. My daughter has confirmed there was an old understanding. It ended.
Lord Somerton married Judith yesterday. Nothing more need be made of it. Catherine heard the familiar pressure in those words. Nothing more need be made of it. That was how pain became duty.
That was how silence became proof that no wrong had occurred. Frederick leaned back slightly, not in retreat but in thought.
I agree that Miss Chatterton need not say more than she wishes. Sir Malcolm's relief was immediate. Precisely. But that is not the same as saying there is nothing more. The relief vanished.
Judith rose. Cyril and I are leaving within the hour. I won't spend the morning listening to my sister revive a courtship that ended 2 years ago. Then you should attend to your journey, Mrs.
Moorfield said. Her voice was gentle and immovable. Judith looked at her aunt with disbelief. Cyril crossed the room and offered his arm. As they passed Catherine, Judith paused.
The rose-cut ring gleamed against her glove. Some things end because they were never meant to last, she said. Catherine met her eyes.
Then they should not need to be rewritten afterward. Cyril guided Judith from the room before she could reply. Sir Malcolm remained only long enough to say that he must see to the carriage.
He left the door open. Catherine knew he would remain near enough to hear anything spoken above a murmur. Frederick knew it too. He waited until Judith's footsteps faded.
You answered more than you owed me, he said. I answered what I chose. That is better. For the first time that morning, Catherine reached for her fan.
Her fingers touched the cracked guard, but she did not open it. Frederick noticed. He noticed everything.
You said last night that a person should have some authority over the account told in their name, she said.
I did. Is that why you asked about the ring? Partly. And the rest? He glanced toward the open doorway before answering.
Because I know what it is to have society preserve the version of a decision that is most convenient to everyone except the people who made it. Catherine waited.
Frederick's expression changed, not dramatically, but enough to reveal that the next words cost him something. Several years ago, my family expected me to marry a woman whose family considered the arrangement settled.
She loved someone else. Did you know? Not until the matter had gone too far. And you ended it. I did. His mouth curved without humor.
Society preferred the word abandoned. Catherine had heard the gossip. The Duke of Westhaven had ended an advantageous match without explanation. Some called him proud. Others called him unstable.
None had mentioned another attachment. Why did you not tell the truth? She asked. Because much of it belonged to her. He paused.
And because silence spared me a confrontation with my own family that I had no wish to endure. I told myself I was protecting her. That was true.
It was not the whole truth. The admission was not polished enough to flatter him. Catherine respected it for that reason. You did not want the match either, she said.
No, yet you allowed society to blame you. At first, I believed silence would end the matter.
Later, correcting it would have required exposing more than I had the right to reveal. Did silence end it? No. Their eyes met.
Catherine understood then that he had not crossed the gallery because he enjoyed rescuing overlooked women.
He had recognized the shape of a lie built from someone else's silence, and he knew he had once helped such a lie survive. Then you know why I cannot simply speak, she said.
I know why you might not. He paused. I also know silence does not remain empty. Someone always fills it. Beyond the open doorway, a floorboard gave a faint complaint.
Sir Malcolm had shifted his weight. Frederick's gaze moved toward the sound, then returned to Catherine. He rose. I will not ask you for more today. Catherine stood as well.
And tomorrow? Tomorrow I may ask whether I am permitted to send my card again. A warmth she had no wish to name moved through her. You may send it, he bowed.
Then I shall. When Frederick crossed the threshold, Sir Malcolm stepped back too late to pretend he had heard nothing. The Duke acknowledged him with a glance and departed.
Catherine remained beside the window, her fan still closed in her hand. Her father had heard enough to know. Frederick believed there had been a promise.
He had heard enough to know the Duke understood. Silence could be used to manufacture innocence. Most dangerous of all, he had heard Catherine speak without asking what the family could endure.
For the first time in 2 years, Sir Malcolm looked at his elder daughter not as the safest keeper of a secret, but as the person who might finally take it away from him.
By the 14th of June, the story had begun to travel faster than any carriage.
It moved through drawing rooms, across luncheon tables, and beneath the lowered voices of women who claimed they disliked gossip while repeating every detail of it.
At Chatterton Hall, Katherine first saw its effect in the face of Mrs. Ellison, a neighbor who had known her since childhood and had once sent broth when Catherine's mother was ill. Mrs.
Ellison arrived with Lady Wexham shortly before noon, spoke warmly to Judith's absence, praised the wedding flowers, and then avoided meeting Catherine's eyes.
That single omission told Katherine more than any accusation could have done. Lady Wexham settled upon the sofa, with the bright composure of a woman carrying news she intended to call concern.
Lady Somerton looked exceedingly happy when she called yesterday, she said. Judith and Cyril had spent one night at Somerton House before beginning a round of visits expected of newlyweds.
Katherine folded her hands in her lap. Her mother's ivory fan rested close beside her. I am glad. She spoke most affectionately of you. Mrs. Morefield's needle paused above her embroidery.
Katherine had learned that affection announced by a third party usually prepared the ground for an insult. Did she? Indeed.
She said you had been rather overcome by the occasion, which was natural after all the work you had done. Lady Wexham smiled. She also explained why you chose to sit near the terrace. Katherine looked toward Sir Malcolm, who stood by the escritoire pretending to sort correspondence.
I did not choose it. Lady Wexham blinked. No, no. Mrs. Ellison finally looked at her, then immediately lowered her gaze to her gloves. Lady Wexham gave a small laugh.
Then perhaps there was confusion. Weddings produce so many minor errors. There was no error. My card was moved. Katherine, Sir Malcolm said. His voice carried a warning softened for company.
She turned to him. Yes, father. There is no value in making an arrangement sound unkind. Then it should not have been unkind. Silence entered the room. Lady Wexham's brows lifted. Mrs.
Ellison's fingers tightened over one another. She had not come expecting Katherine to contradict the account. Lady Wexham recovered first.
Lady Somerton meant only to prevent unnecessary speculation.
She feared people might think you arranged the Duke's attention upon her wedding day. Katherine felt the shape of Judith's strategy then. The misplaced seat had become Katherine's request.
Frederick's choice had become Katherine's scheme. Nothing had been invented so boldly that it could be called absurd.
Each falsehood was only a slight adjustment of motive, polished until cruelty looked like misunderstanding. His Grace crossed the room of his own accord, Katherine said.
Anyone who watched him do so knows that. Of course, Lady Wexham replied. Yet Lord Somerton has suggested there may have been some earlier feeling on your side.
He was most discreet. Katherine's pulse slowed rather than quickened. Discreet men rarely explain a woman's feelings to strangers. Mrs. Ellison looked up again. This time she did not look away.
Lady Wexham set down her cup. He only wished to correct a mistaken impression. He said there had once been a brief understanding, but that you ended it when his prospects were uncertain.
A sensible decision, perhaps, though such decisions can appear different when a gentleman later succeeds. There it was, not merely a denial of injury, but a motive placed into Catherine's mouth.
Cyril had transformed her from the woman he abandoned into the woman who rejected him for ambition and regretted it only after he inherited his title.
Katherine felt the old temptation to protect everyone from discomfort. She let it pass. Lord Somerton's prospects were uncertain when he gave me a ring, she said.
Lady Wexham's expression sharpened. Sir Malcolm stepped away from the escritoire. Katherine. She did not look at him.
If he now claims uncertainty ended the matter, he may explain why he continued the understanding afterward. You speak as if there were a formal engagement, Lady Wexham said.
There was no public announcement. Katherine held her gaze. That is not the same as saying there was no promise. Mrs. Ellison's face changed.
The discomfort there was no longer directed at Katherine. Lady Wexham gathered her gloves.
I am certain no harm was intended. Harm does not become kindness because it is described politely. Sir Malcolm's mouth hardened. The visit ended within minutes. Mrs.
Ellison paused beside Katherine before leaving. I hope you will forgive me, she said softly.
For what? For believing an account before hearing yours. Katherine looked at the woman who had avoided her eyes upon entering. The apology did not repair the injury, but it named it.
Thank you for saying so.
Mrs. Ellison pressed her lips together, and followed Lady Wexam from the room. When the carriage rolled away, Sir Malcolm closed the drawing-room door.
You handled that badly. Catherine remained beside the tea table.
I answered what was said. You confirmed there was an attachment. There was. You invited questions. The questions were already here.
I only refused the answers Judith and Cyril supplied. Sir Malcolm crossed toward her. Judith is newly married.
Her position must be protected. From what? From the appearance that she displaced you. Catherine looked at him. Did she not? His face tightened.
You chose to release Somerton. I agreed to what you asked me to endure. That is not the same thing, Mrs.
Moorfield rose, but before she could speak, the butler entered with a card upon the salver. Frederick Kingsley, Duke of Westhaven. The name altered the room at once.
Sir Malcolm's anger became calculation. Catherine looked at the card and remembered Frederick saying he would ask permission rather than assume it. "Will you receive him?" Mrs. Moorfield asked.
Yes. The morning room was prepared with the door left open and Mrs. Moorfield seated within proper sight. Frederick entered without ceremony.
He greeted Catherine first, then her aunt, and only afterward acknowledged Sir Malcolm, who had chosen to remain near the window. Miss Chatterton, Frederick said.
Your Grace. His gaze rested upon her for a moment. You have had visitors. Catherine looked toward the abandoned teacups.
The county has begun to explain my life to itself. His expression sharpened. What account has it chosen? Sir Malcolm answered before she could. A few foolish remarks.
Nothing of consequence. Frederick looked at Catherine. Do you agree? No. Sir Malcolm exhaled through his nose. Catherine continued. My sister has said I requested the seat near the terrace.
She has also suggested I arranged our dance. Lord Somerton has told people I ended our understanding because his prospects were uncertain. Frederick's face became very still.
Did you? No. Then the account is false. The simplicity of his answer loosened something in Catherine's chest. He did not ask whether she had encouraged him.
He did not search for a compromise that would spare Cyril. Sir Malcolm stepped forward. Your Grace, Judith is trying to prevent misunderstanding.
The county is inclined to exaggerate unusual attention. A dance is unusual attention. From you, perhaps. Frederick's gaze cooled.
That sounds like my difficulty, not Miss Chatterton's. Sir Malcolm said nothing. Frederick turned back to Catherine.
Would you like me to correct the account publicly? The offer carried real power.
One sentence from him at dinner, one deliberate statement that he had acted without encouragement, and half the county would retreat. The other half would simply replace Judith's story with another.
Catherine would become the woman defended by Westhaven instead of the woman discarded by Somerton. Her value would still be measured through a man's decision. No, she said.
Frederick did not hide his surprise.
No? I do not want our dance made into a public claim upon me merely because others have chosen to lie about it. His expression changed, not with offense but thought.
I would not say more than was true. You would not need to. People would hear what best suited them. She kept her voice steady.
I will not exchange Judith's account for another in which I matter only because a duke noticed me. Sir Malcolm made a shocked sound. Mrs. Moorfield's embroidery remained perfectly still.
Frederick considered Catherine for a long moment. Then he inclined his head. Very well. No argument. No insistence that his judgment outranked hers.
How would you have me behave? As you intended before anyone began assigning motives. And if I intended to call again, then call again. Warmth entered his eyes, restrained but unmistakable.
I can manage that, Sir Malcolm interrupted. Continued attention will only encourage speculation. Frederick looked toward him.
Speculation appears well supplied without my assistance. Catherine almost smiled. This time she allowed it. Frederick saw. He rose soon afterward, promising nothing she had not asked for.
At the door, he paused. Did Lord Somerton name a date? Only that it ended early in 1815, Catherine said.
Nothing more exact. Men are often imprecise when precision would expose them, Frederick replied. Then he bowed and left. That evening a note arrived from Judith at Somerton House.
She and Cyril had accepted an invitation to dine at Keldon Court on the 20th of June. Judith added that she would wear the Somerton family ring, so no one could mistake where it belonged.
Catherine read the line twice. Cyril would not name a date. Judith would display the object. Between those two choices lay a truth neither of them wished examined too closely.
The road to Keldon Court took nearly 2 hours, long enough for Catherine to reconsider the invitation several times and accept, each time, that she had no intention of retreating.
She sat beside Mrs. Moorfield in Sir Malcolm's carriage, while the June evening stretched gold across the Hampshire fields.
Her father spoke twice about the condition of the road and once about the lateness of the hay. No one answered. Catherine held her mother's ivory fan closed across her lap.
She had chosen a dark green silk gown with no ornament beyond a narrow strand of pearls at her throat. Judith would call the color severe. Judith had always mistaken restraint for defeat.
Keldon Court appeared beyond an avenue of elms, pale stone beneath a clear sky, impressive without displaying its grandeur as a threat. Footmen received them beneath the portico.
Inside, black and white marble led toward a drawing room where Frederick's widowed cousin, Lady Eleanor Fenmore, welcomed the arriving guests with composed warmth. Frederick stood beside her.
His greeting to Sir Malcolm was correct. His acknowledgment of Mrs. Moorfield held respect. When he turned to Catherine, very little changed in his expression, yet she felt the difference.
Miss Chatterton, Your Grace, I am pleased you came. I was curious whether dinner at Keldon Court would prove as dangerous as dancing at Chatterton Hall. I have forbidden the musicians from
approaching you without permission. Then I may survive the evening. A quiet amusement touched his eyes before the next carriage arrived.
Judith entered on Cyril's arm in pale amber silk, the rose-cut ring displayed beside her wedding band.
She had positioned her left hand so deliberately that even Lady Eleanor's first glance fell upon it. "Your Grace," Judith said after her curtsy, "you see I kept my promise." No one can mistake the Somerton family ring tonight. Frederick looked at the jewel. Then he looked at Catherine. "Can they not?" Judith's smile tightened. Cyril answered before she could.
"The gold has belonged to my family for years. Then it has had time to acquire a history," Frederick said. "Several, perhaps." Cyril's gaze cooled.
"Only the present ownership is relevant." Catherine lowered her fan before Judith could see satisfaction move across her face. Frederick had not accused anyone.
He had merely declined to accept ownership as the beginning of the story. Dinner proceeded beneath chandeliers bright enough to expose every glance guests meant to hide. Lady Eleanor had seated Mrs.
Moorfield near Catherine, with Sir Malcolm opposite them. Judith sat nearer Frederick according to rank, while Cyril occupied the place beside his wife.
The arrangement offered no insult for anyone to seize upon. Judith attempted one nonetheless.
During the second course, Lady Wexham praised the wedding and declared that no bride in Hampshire had appeared happier.
Judith thanked her, then turned toward Catherine with carefully measured affection. "My sister deserves much of the credit."
She has always preferred arranging happiness for others. Catherine set down her fork. "It is useful work when the others cooperate." 2 guests smiled. Judith continued as though she had not heard.
"Catherine has never cared for display. Even as a girl, she preferred observing courtship to participating in it." Frederick lifted his wineglass but did not drink.
"Did she tell you that?" Judith blinked. "We are sisters. I know her. That was not my question." The words were mild. Their precision left Judith nowhere comfortable to stand. She touched the ring.
Catherine has always been sensible. She understands that some attachments are better forgotten. Cyril's hand tightened around the stem of his glass. Sir Malcolm stared at his plate.
Catherine could have defended herself at length. She refused to let Judith choose the terms of the conversation. "Memory is not the same as longing," she said.
"Only people who fear the first confuse it with the second." Silence touched the table. Frederick's gaze held hers. Judith gave a soft laugh.
"I meant no unkindness." Then none was required. Lady Eleanor redirected the conversation toward the new conservatory roof, and the meal continued.
Yet the ring remained visible each time Judith lifted her hand. Cyril called it an old family piece when another guest admired the setting.
He spoke of the gold, the diamond, and the missing seed pearl. He did not say when it had been made or for whom. Catherine noticed the omission. Frederick did too.
After dinner, the ladies withdrew, and Judith spent several minutes describing the cabinet she intended to install at Somerton House for family jewels.
"The ring will have a proper place when I am not wearing it," she told Catherine. "I am relieved it will not suffer neglect. You looked at it throughout dinner. You arranged your hands so that—"
Everyone would. Judith's expression sharpened, but the gentleman entered before she could answer.
A short while later, Frederick invited several guests to see the conservatory's night-blooming flowers. Lady Eleanor remained with the older ladies. Mrs.
Moorfield accepted the walk and kept within proper sight as Catherine and Frederick moved beneath the glass roof. Evening had deepened beyond the panes.
The air smelled of damp soil, jasmine, and the faint bitterness of lemon leaves. Frederick waited until the drawing-room doors had closed behind them.
Your sister wanted that ring to wound you. Judith often mistakes pain for proof. Proof of what? That she has won. His expression tightened.
Has she? Catherine looked through the glass toward the darkening gardens. Cyril is her husband. I do not want him returned. That was not what I asked. She lowered the fan. No, she has not won.
But she has what she wanted, the certainty of being chosen first. Catherine looked at him.
You notice too much. I have been told it is an unattractive habit, by people who preferred not to be seen clearly. Usually, they walked a few paces in silence. Mrs.
Moorfield paused near a white jasmine trained over an iron arch, close enough to satisfy propriety, but far enough to grant them privacy. Frederick stopped beside a lemon tree in bloom.
Were you ever asked whether you wished to release Somerton? Catherine's fingers tightened around the fan. I was asked what I could endure. He became very still. That is not the same thing.
No, and Somerton? He said almost nothing. Silence served him. It served everyone except me. Frederick looked down at his hands, then clasped them behind his back.
I told you only part of my own history. Catherine waited. Lady Caroline Ashdown loved another man, he said, a younger son with little fortune.
When she told me, our families already considered the arrangement settled. And you ended it. Yes, to protect her. Partly, the answer surprised her. Frederick's mouth tightened.
I did not want the marriage either. It was politically useful, socially perfect, and entirely empty. Ending it spared her.
It also spared me from admitting to my family that I had allowed them to plan my life because opposing them was inconvenient. Catherine studied his face.
Thus your silence was not wholly noble. No, yet society blamed you. I allowed it. At first because the truth belonged to her.
Later, because correcting the account would have required admitting how long I had hidden behind duty. The honesty unsettled her more deeply than a flawless confession would have done.
He was not offering himself as proof that suffering made a person virtuous. He was showing her where fear had lived inside his good intentions.
Did Lady Caroline marry the man she loved? Catherine asked, 2 years later, quietly.
I believe she is happy. And you? I became a warning mothers gave their daughters. A faint smile touched her mouth.
You do not appear wounded by that. I have had years to practice appearing untroubled. Appearance is not always accomplishment. His eyes warmed, recognizing her words from their dance.
No, he paused. Did you love Somerton? Catherine had expected pity from some people and accusation from others. She had not expected the question to be asked without either. Yes, she said.
Once. The word hurt less than she had feared. Not now. Relief moved across Frederick's face before he controlled it.
You need not reassure me. I did not. His smile appeared fully then, brief and unguarded.
You seldom do what is expected merely because it is expected. My family would disagree. Your family has made several errors in its account of you, Mrs.
Moorfield approached before Catherine could answer. The jasmine is lovely, she said, though her expression suggested the flowers had not occupied all her attention.
Frederick offered his arm for the return to the drawing-room. He waited until Catherine chose to place her hand upon it. When they re-entered, Judith was laughing beside Lady Wexham.
Cyril stood near the card table. Sir Malcolm watched Catherine and Frederick with an unease he made no attempt to conceal. The evening ended without open confrontation.
It was only after the Chatterton carriage had left Keldon Court, with the last lights of the house receding behind them, that Mrs. Moorfield spoke. You asked Catherine to release Mr.
Bexley 3 days after Judith's bequest was confirmed. Sir Malcolm turned sharply toward her. Anne, this is neither the hour nor the place. The hour does not alter the date. You misunderstand.
What happened? Then correct me. He looked toward Catherine, then out into the darkness beyond the carriage window. The bequest was confirmed on the 5th of November, he said.
I spoke to Catherine on the 8th because the family required a decision. Silence followed. Sir Malcolm seemed to hear his own words only after they had left him. Mrs. Moorfield did not press further. She did not need to. Katherine sat motionless. The fan closed beneath her hands.
3 days after Judith's money became certain, her father had asked what she could endure. Cyril had avoided naming when the understanding ended.
The ring had later appeared on Judith's hand, altered but not entirely erased. Somewhere between those facts lay a choice her family had spent 2 years calling destiny.
Katherine looked back once at the distant lights of Keldon Court, and wondered how many days had passed between the 8th of November and the moment someone ordered her name filed from the gold.
On the morning of the 24th of June, Sir Malcolm placed a single sheet of paper before Katherine and asked her to lend her own voice to the lie that had been built around her.
The paper lay upon the desk in his study, written in his neat hand and blotted with unusual care. Sunlight fell across the final lines, making every phrase appear respectable.
Katherine remained standing. Mrs. Moorfield sat near the window with her reticule in her lap.
Cyril occupied the chair opposite Sir Malcolm, composed enough to suggest that the meeting had been arranged before Katherine was summoned.
Judith stood beside the mantel in a pale muslin morning gown, turning the rose-cut ring around her finger. It shifted more easily than it had at Keldon Court. "Read it," Sir Malcolm said.
Katherine did. The statement declared that her former understanding with Cyril had never been formal or serious.
It said she had ended it freely because she did not wish to wait upon uncertain prospects. It assured the county that she rejoiced in the marriage between Judith and Lord Somerton.
It concluded by describing Frederick's dance as an innocent courtesy that had been misunderstood by people eager for gossip.
When Katherine reached the final sentence, she placed the page back upon the desk. "Who was meant to hear this?" "The guests at the garden party," Sir Malcolm replied. "Only a few words before the
Cold collation. You wish me to stand before the county and say Cyril's version is true. I wish you to end speculation. By creating certainty where there is none." Cyril leaned back.
"There is certainty. The understanding ended. That is not the disputed part." His eyes cooled.
"You refused to wait for me. You have not yet decided when I supposedly refused." Judith's hand stopped moving. Sir Malcolm looked from Katherine to Cyril.
Dates are not the point. They become important when Lord Somerton changes them. Cyril's composure held, but only just.
"You are clinging to details because the larger truth does not flatter you." Katherine looked at him steadily.
The larger truth was built from the details you hoped no one would examine. Sir Malcolm lifted the statement.
"You will read this on the 1st of July. No." The word entered the room without heat. Judith stared at her.
"You can't mean that." "I do. You're willing to embarrass me before everyone we know because you cannot surrender an old grievance." Katherine turned toward her sister. "I surrendered Cyril."
"I will not surrender the truth as well." Judith's expression tightened. "He chose me. Then why does your happiness require me to say he never chose anyone else?" Cyril rose.
"Take care, Katherine. Of what? Of forcing me to answer publicly. You have been answering publicly for weeks. Not fully." His voice became quieter, which made the threat more deliberate.
"If you refuse the statement, I will say that after our understanding ended, you attempted to revive it. I will say you resented Judith and used the Duke's attention to provoke me. Mrs.
Moorfield stood. That would be false. Cyril did not look at her. "I will say Miss Chatterton continued to press her claim after my marriage." Katherine felt the full intention beneath the words.
He was not merely threatening to call her disappointed. He meant to suggest she had pursued a married man. In their world, the accusation would not need proof to stain her.
A few carefully placed remarks, repeated by women like Lady Wexham, would be enough. "You would say that knowing it is untrue," she said. Cyril's expression did not change.
"I would say what becomes necessary if you continue to attack my wife. Your wife has spent 2 weeks speaking in my name. Because you left a dangerous silence. No,
You filled it." Sir Malcolm struck the paper against the desk. "Enough. This can still be settled privately." Katherine looked at him.
"By my public dishonesty, by your loyalty. To whom? To this family. I am part of this family only when something must be endured." His face hardened.
"You live beneath my roof." The room became very still. Mrs. Moorfield moved closer to Katherine. "Is that a warning, Malcolm?" "It is a fact." No household can function when one member continually undermines the rest. Katherine understood the condition
He had not yet spoken plainly.
Residence at Chatterton Hall would depend upon her willingness to protect Judith and Cyril. Home had become another argument placed before her. "And if I do not read the statement?" she asked.
Sir Malcolm looked toward the window. "Then we shall have to consider whether your remaining here serves anyone." Judith lowered her eyes, but she did not object.
Cyril returned to his chair as though the matter had been resolved. Mrs. Morfield's voice cut through the silence. "I was present on the 8th of November." Sir Malcolm turned sharply. "Anne, I heard you tell Catherine that Judith's bequest had changed what was practical. I heard you ask her to release Mr. Bexley for the stability of the family." Cyril's jaw tightened.
Judith looked from her aunt to Sir Malcolm.
That isn't what happened. It is what I heard. You misunderstood. Then you have had nearly 2 years to correct me. Sir Malcolm's hand closed around the statement.
This is a private family matter. You have invited half the county into it by asking Catherine to lie before them. Mrs. Morfield looked at Cyril.
"And if Lord Somerton accuses her of pursuing him after his marriage, I will say what I witnessed before it." Cyril's composure cracked for 1 second.
Catherine saw it and understood that the truth did not need to be complete to frighten him. It only needed another person willing to repeat it. Sir Malcolm held out the page once more. "Read it at the garden party, and none of this need go farther." Catherine did not touch the paper.
"No, you are being selfish. Perhaps I have begun to know my own mind." She turned toward the door.
And perhaps that only appears selfish, because everyone here preferred it when I did not use it. Mrs. Morfield followed her from the study. No one called them back.
Later that afternoon, Catherine found her aunt in the small morning parlor overlooking the east lawn. Servants were already preparing for the 1st of July.
Men carried folded awnings across the grass while gardeners placed urns along the terrace.
The ordinary work of hospitality continued as though no one inside the house had just made honesty the price of shelter. Mrs. Morfield sat at the writing table with a sealed note before her.
Catherine recognized the direction. "Keldon Court." "You wrote to him," she said. Her aunt looked up. "Yes, without asking me. Yes." Mrs. Morfield did not defend herself. "I told his grace that."
Your family was pressing you to make a public statement, and that Lord Somerton had threatened your character. Catherine felt irritation rise, not because she wanted Frederick ignorant, but because,
once again, someone had acted in her name. You should have asked. I should. The apology was immediate and complete. I was frightened for you, and I allowed fear to make the decision.
"I am sorry." Catherine stood beside the desk, looking at the sealed note. Her anger had nowhere to fasten because her aunt had not wrapped the mistake in good intentions and demanded gratitude.
From now on, Catherine said, no one acts for me without asking first. Agreed, even when you believe the action is necessary, especially then. A footman entered before Catherine could answer, carrying a folded note upon a tray. The seal bore the Kingsley crest. Mrs. Morfield did not reach for it. Catherine accepted it herself. Frederick's message was brief.
He had been informed that the garden party might place Catherine under pressure she had not chosen. He would not come to Chatterton Hall without invitation. If she wished, he would arrange for his widowed cousin, Lady Eleanor Fenmore, to collect Catherine and Mrs. Morfield and remain with them throughout the event.
If she preferred no assistance, he would respect that answer and ask no explanation. He did not offer to confront Cyril. He did not promise to silence the county.
He offered a carriage, a chaperone, and a choice. "What will you say?" Mrs. Morfield asked. Catherine read the note again. "That I accept Lady Eleanor's escort. Are you certain?" "Yes."
"I will attend because I will not let absence be called guilt." She crossed to the writing desk and answered in her own hand. She thanked Frederick for the arrangement.
She accepted for herself and Mrs. Morfield. She added that no public declaration was required and no action should be taken unless she asked for it.
When she had sealed the reply, Judith appeared in the doorway. Her gaze fell upon the Kingsley crest. "You are writing to him. I am answering a note." Judith entered.
The ring moved loosely when she pulled at the finger of her glove.
"Do you think His Grace's attention changes what happened? No. Cyril chose me." Catherine looked at the old ring beside the newer wedding band. "Then you should not need me to certify it." Judith lifted her hand. "At the garden party, everyone will see where this belongs." She tugged the glove more sharply.
The ring turned and slid a fraction toward her knuckle before she caught it with her thumb. Katherine noticed. Judith did not. "Wear it," Katherine said.
Display it if that is what you require. Judith narrowed her eyes. I intend to.
And when the county drinks to the woman he finally chose, perhaps you will stop pretending the past still matters. She closed her fist around the ring and left.
Katherine remained beside the writing desk, Frederick's sealed reply beneath her hand. Beyond the window, the awnings were raised one by one across the lawn.
On the 1st of July, Judith meant to place the ring before every eye in Hampshire.
She did not yet understand that the more fiercely a person displayed an object, the more likely someone was to look closely enough to see what it remembered.
The 1st of July arrived beneath a bright, windless sky that made Chatterton Hall appear calmer than anyone within it deserved. By noon, striped awnings had been raised across the south lawn, white
cloths covered the refreshment tables, and a small ensemble played near the Rose Walk, while county families moved between the terrace and gardens in summer silks and pale gloves.
Katherine arrived beside Mrs. Moorfield and Lady Eleanor Fenmore in the carriage Frederick had arranged. Lady Eleanor was a composed widow in her early 40s whose kindness took practical forms.
She had sent the carriage time in writing, brought an extra parasol in case Katherine had forgotten hers, and asked no question Katherine had not invited.
Frederick came separately from Keldon Court shortly afterward. His presence changed the balance of the gathering at once.
Guests who had dismissed the wedding dance as an accident now watched where he looked.
He greeted Sir Malcolm formally, acknowledged Judith and Cyril with exact civility, then bowed to Katherine without turning the moment into a performance.
Miss Chatterton, Your Grace. His gaze moved briefly to Lady Eleanor and Mrs. Moorfield, confirming that the arrangement had been respected.
Was the journey comfortable? Entirely. Then I have performed one useful act today. The day is young. A restrained warmth entered his eyes.
I shall try not to disappoint it. Judith saw the exchange from the terrace.
Katherine knew because her sister's left hand rose almost immediately to adjust the brim of her bonnet, placing the old ring in full view. It had shifted farther along Judith's finger than before.
Katherine saw the looseness and looked away. She had come to refuse a lie, not to be drawn into a contest over a man she no longer wanted, and a ring she had already returned. For the first hour the party remained outwardly pleasant. Lady Wexham praised the weather. Sir Malcolm discussed rents and hay with neighboring landowners. Churl stood beneath the cedar with several gentlemen and laughed often enough to suggest he had nothing to fear. Katherine remained near Mrs.
Moorfield, receiving polite greetings and several cautious questions about Judith's wedding. She answered without bitterness. When one woman called Frederick's dance unexpectedly romantic,
Katherine said, "A gracious act does not become a declaration merely because a room enjoys imagining one." Frederick stood close enough to hear.
He did not contradict her or add meaning she had refused to give. That restraint steadied her more than public defense would have done.
Shortly before the cold collation, Judith approached with Cyril several paces behind her.
She wore cream muslin embroidered with blue cornflowers, and the rose-cut diamond flashed beside her wedding band. Sir Malcolm noticed their direction and abandoned his conversation near the steps.
Within moments, the family stood in a half-circle, visible to nearly everyone on the lawn. Judith smiled at Lady Eleanor.
I hope my sister has not exhausted you with the journey. Miss Chatterton was excellent company, Lady Eleanor replied. How fortunate! Judith turned toward Katherine. You look well.
I had feared the excitement might be difficult after our conversation. Which conversation? The one in which you admitted that the ring belongs to me. Several nearby guests quieted.
Katherine felt the trap close with almost delicate precision. If she denied the words, she would appear covetous. If she agreed without qualification, Judith would claim surrender.
Katherine opened her mother's fan once, felt the cracked guard beneath her thumb, then closed it again. I said it belongs to you now. Judith's smile sharpened.
Exactly. That is not the same as saying it has no history. Cyril stepped nearer. Must this be discussed before guests? Katherine looked at him.
You and Judith chose the audience. No one forced you to come, Judith said. No one forced you to wear it. The answer was quiet, but Judith heard the challenge beneath it.
Her fingers closed over the jewel. It is my husband's family ring. It became that after it had been something else. A murmur moved among the nearest guests.
Sir Malcolm approached with controlled urgency. Catherine, this is neither the time nor the place. It was not my subject, then end it. Judith gave a small, wounded laugh.
I only wanted her to see that I am not ashamed. Of what? Catherine asked. Judith's face changed. For a heartbeat, truth came close enough to frighten her. Then pride returned.
Of being loved. She tugged at her left glove with an impatient movement, perhaps to display the ring more clearly. The summer heat had dampened the leather.
The old gold caught against the inner seam. When Judith freed her fingers, the ring spun loose. It slipped over her knuckle. Catherine saw the movement before anyone else did. The jewel fell.
She reached out instinctively and caught it against her palm before it struck the gravel. The party seemed to stop around them.
Catherine held the ring for no more than a few seconds, yet time widened. The rose-cut diamond was exactly as she remembered. One seed pearl was missing from the border.
The gold bore the faint compression of resizing. Inside, beneath the filed surface, 2 marks remained. The curve of a K, the beginning of a C.
Below them sat the tiny stamp she had seen once in Winchester, when Cyril brought the ring to her. Ainsley. Judith's hand shot toward her. Give it back. Catherine lifted her eyes.
I intend to. You were trying to keep it. The accusation carried across the lawn before Catherine had moved. Several guests turned fully toward them. Cyril stepped forward.
Judith. She caught it and just stood there looking at it. Because it carries my initials, Catherine said. Silence followed, deeper than the first. Judith's face went pale.
It doesn't. They were filed down. Not entirely. Catherine placed the ring in Judith's open palm. Every person near them saw the transfer. There.
It is returned. Judith closed her fingers around it, but the public scene she had tried to control had shifted beyond her. You see, she said, looking toward the guests.
She cannot let the matter rest. She has always wanted what is mine. It was not yours when it was made. Cyril's expression hardened.
That is enough. Frederick had moved closer, though he remained 1 step behind Catherine's right shoulder. He did not take her arm. He did not speak for her.
His presence prevented Cyril from crowding her, but the center of the moment remained Catherine's. Cyril looked around at the gathered faces and made a calculation.
There was once a brief understanding, he said. Miss Chatterton ended it in January of 1815. She believed my prospects uncertain and did not wish to wait. Catherine stared at him.
There it was at last, not merely silence. A date, a motive, and a complete false history offered before witnesses. Sir Malcolm's face became very still. Mrs. Moorfield drew a slow breath.
Judith seized upon the claim. You see, Cyril has told you. Catherine refused him. In January? Catherine asked. Cyril met her gaze.
Yes. You are certain? Entirely. Catherine looked at Judith's closed fist, then back at him. Her heartbeat had become steady. The ring no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a fact.
Then why was it made for me in March? No one answered. Cyril's composure broke only slightly, but Catherine saw it. His eyes moved toward the ring before returning to her face.
Judith looked at him. What does she mean? Nothing, he said too quickly. Frederick spoke at last, not to explain, but to preserve what had just happened. Lord Somerton has given a date.
Miss Chatterton has challenged it with a fact capable of verification. Cyril's jaw tightened. This is a family misunderstanding. Then verification should relieve you, Frederick replied.
Sir Malcolm stepped between them. There will be no further discussion today. There must be, Judith said. Her voice had lost its polish.
Cyril, was the ring made in March? He reached for her hand. She pulled it back. For the first time since the wedding, Catherine saw fear beneath her sister's triumph. Not fear of losing Cyril.
Fear that being chosen had depended upon something other than love. Cyril lowered his voice. We will discuss this privately. Judith turned on Catherine.
You planned this. I did not make your ring loose. A few guests looked away to conceal their reactions. The truth of that simple answer carried more force than accusation.
Frederick remained beside Catherine. Would you like to leave? He asked quietly.
Catherine looked across the lawn at the people who had watched her return the ring, heard Cyril's date, and heard her question. For 2 years, she had left rooms to spare others discomfort.
No, she said. I have done nothing that requires retreat. Frederick inclined his head. Then I shall remain. The musicians began again near the Rose Walk, uncertain and too loud.
Conversation returned in fragments, but the gathering had changed. Judith stood with the ring closed inside her fist. Cyril spoke to her in a voice she did not seem to hear.
Sir Malcolm watched Catherine, as if the daughter he had relied upon had become dangerous merely by remembering the order in which things had happened. Catherine opened her mother's fan, not to hide her face, but to cool it beneath the July sun. Ainsley. The name remained clear in her mind. Somewhere in Winchester, a goldsmith might still possess the dates Cyril had just wagered his honor upon.
Sir Malcolm waited until the morning after the garden party to turn Catherine's honesty into the price of her home. He summoned her to the library shortly after breakfast on the 2nd of July.
Cyril stood near the windows with one hand resting against the back of a chair. Judith sat upon the sofa, pale from anger rather than grief, the rose-cut ring still on her finger.
She had pushed it beneath her wedding band, as though the newer circle might secure the older one. Mrs. Moorfield entered beside Catherine and left the door open.
Sir Malcolm held the statement Catherine had refused to read at the garden party. "This cannot continue," he said. Catherine looked at the paper rather than at him.
"Then stop asking me to repeat what is false. You created a public scene before half the county. The ring fell. I caught it. Lord Somerton gave a date."
I asked a question. Cyril's voice remained smooth. "You accused me of lying. You said January. I may have mistaken the month. Yesterday you were entirely certain." His jaw tightened. "You will explain that the ring was commissioned as a family intention, and that no serious engagement existed." Catherine looked at him. "That is a new lie built to rescue the old one." Judith rose.
"Why must you make everything sound cruel? Because cruelty does not become kindness when it is phrased carefully." Judith's hand closed over the ring.
Everyone looked at me as if I had stolen it. You knew it had been mine. Cyril gave it to me, after I returned it, because you didn't want him. Catherine turned toward her sister.
"Because father asked what I could endure for the family." Sir Malcolm's expression hardened. "Enough." "No," Catherine said. "Not enough."
That has always been the difficulty. Cyril moved away from the window. If you persist, society will not admire your courage. It will conclude that you are trying to disturb your sister's marriage.
"Society has already concluded whatever best serves you. Leaving matters as they are would be wiser. For whom? For everyone." Catherine almost smiled at the familiarity of the answer.
Everyone had always meant Judith, Cyril, Sir Malcolm, the family name, the household peace, and any guest who preferred comfort to truth. It had never meant her.
Sir Malcolm placed the statement upon the desk. "You will endorse this account, or you cannot remain at Chatterton Hall while encouraging an attack upon your sister's marriage. Mrs."
Moorfield stepped closer to Catherine. "She has encouraged no attack. And this is my house. Yes, that is why the shame of this decision will be yours." Sir Malcolm's face tightened.
Catherine may stay if she behaves with loyalty. Catherine looked around the library. Her mother had read beside the east window.
Catherine had catalogued the shelves when Sir Malcolm complained that no one could find the estate maps or family histories.
She had ordered the binding of the damaged volumes, mended the loose curtains, and spent winter evenings making lists of repairs that were later spoken of as if they had arranged themselves.
For years she had believed endurance might one day earn belonging. Now she understood the bargain. She had been welcome only while her silence remained useful. "Then I shall leave," she said.
Judith stared at her. Cyril's expression changed first, a brief loss of control before calculation returned. Sir Malcolm lowered the paper. "Do not be foolish. I am being exact."
I will not endorse Lord Somerton's account, and I will not live where honesty is treated as disloyalty. Where would you go? Mrs. Moorfield answered.
"With me." Sir Malcolm looked at his sister-in-law. "For how long?" "As long as Catherine wishes." Judith crossed the space between them.
"You're doing this so people will think father cast you out. I am leaving before he can. That is the same thing. No."
"It is the difference between being removed and choosing not to remain." Cyril spoke more sharply. "If you leave now, the county will take it as an admission of guilt." Catherine faced him.
"The county watched me return Judith's ring before witnesses. It heard you name January. It heard my question."
My departure will not change those facts.
Facts are not always what people remember. Then I will give them something else to remember. Sir Malcolm sat down heavily.
For one moment he looked older rather than powerful. You will regret this, perhaps, Katherine said, but the regret will be mine. No one tried to stop her when she left the library with Mrs.
Moorfield beside her. By 9 the next morning, 2 trunks stood in the entrance hall. Katherine had packed clothing, personal correspondence, a small writing case, and her mother's ivory fan.
She took no family papers, no account books, no silver, and nothing that might later be described as stolen.
The rose-cut ring remained with Judith, who had returned to Somerton House with Cyril before breakfast. Katherine had not seen her sister again.
A maid carried down the final bandbox, while a footman secured the trunks to Mrs. Moorfield's carriage. The journey to Winchester would take little more than an hour if the roads remained dry.
Katherine stood at the foot of the staircase and looked once toward the closed library door. She expected grief to overwhelm her. Instead, she felt the peculiar quiet that followed a decision delayed too long. The front door opened behind her. Sir Malcolm came into the hall. He did not approach.
You may still reconsider. Katherine turned. Will you withdraw the statement? I cannot permit Somerton's name to be damaged by an accusation that remains unproved. Then there is nothing to
reconsider. You are my daughter. I have been your daughter every day you asked me to disappear. He flinched. Katherine had not raised her voice. That made the words harder to dismiss. Mrs.
Moorfield entered the carriage first. Katherine followed, and placed the closed fan upon her lap.
As the wheels began to move, Sir Malcolm remained beneath the doorway, with one hand resting against the frame. Katherine did not look back a second time.
Frederick arrived at Chatterton Hall less than an hour later. Katherine learned this only after reaching Moorfield House, when Lady Eleanor's note was delivered that afternoon.
His Grace had heard that Sir Malcolm intended to press Katherine again, and had come to offer assistance. He found the trunks gone and the carriage already well along the Winchester road.
He did not pursue it. He did not arrive at Moorfield House without invitation. Instead, he left his card at Chatterton Hall so no one could claim he had abandoned her, then sent a separate message
through Lady Eleanor, asking whether Katherine would permit a morning call on the following day. The restraint affected Katherine more deeply than a dramatic rescue would have done.
Frederick had come too late to prevent her departure because she had not waited to be saved. He had also understood that her choice did not give him the right to follow without permission.
Moorfield House stood on a quiet Winchester street within walking distance of the cathedral close.
It was smaller than Chatterton Hall, with fewer servants and no portrait gallery, but nothing in it felt conditional, Mrs.
Moorfield gave Katherine the blue bedchamber overlooking a walled garden and told her the writing desk was hers for as long as she required it.
By evening, Katherine's new calling address had been written upon fresh cards and sent to several respectable households before Judith's version could arrive first. It arrived nonetheless.
Lady Wexham's servant brought word that Lady Somerton had said Katherine had been removed from Chatterton Hall because of improper conduct toward the Duke of Westhaven.
Katherine read the message once, then placed it beside Frederick's request for a call. She has chosen her account, Mrs. Moorfield said.
Then I shall choose where mine is answered. Katherine wrote that she would receive Frederick at 11, with her aunt present. After sealing the note, she crossed to the window.
The summer garden below was small, enclosed by brick and entirely unfamiliar. She opened her mother's fan.
The painted moonlit garden spread across the silk, the cracked guard unchanged beneath her fingers.
She remembered the marks inside the ring, the tiny stamp below her filed initials, and the name of the man whose work had survived alteration. Mr. Julian Ainsley, she said.
On the following morning, she would ask a Winchester goldsmith what the ring remembered. On the 5th of July, Lord Somerton's valet delivered a narrow jeweler's box to Mr.
Julian Ainsley's shop in Winchester, with instructions that the ring inside be tightened and returned before the end of the week. The box bore Somerton's seal.
The receipt named Lady Somerton as owner. Mr. Ainsley signed for it, carried it into the rear workroom, and opened it beneath the north window where the light was strongest.
The rose-cut diamond had not changed. One seed pearl was still missing from the border.
The old gold band showed the faint compression of an earlier alteration, and beneath the newer polish, 2 filed marks remained where initials had once been cut.
He was still examining his maker's stamp below them when his apprentice announced that Mrs. Moorfield and Miss Chatterton had called.
Katherine entered the shop beside her aunt in a dove-colored muslin gown beneath a light pelisse. Her mother's ivory fan was closed in one hand.
Moorfield House had given her only 2 nights of freedom, yet the change in her was visible. She no longer glanced toward a doorway before speaking. Mr.
Ainsley came forward from behind the glass display case. He was a careful man in his late 50s, with silver spectacles and fingers faintly darkened by polishing compound. Mrs. Moorfield.
Miss Chatterton. His gaze rested upon Katherine. Forgive me, we have met before. In this shop, Katherine said. March of 1815. Recognition moved through his face. Yes, you came with Mr.
Bexley. He was not Lord Somerton then. No, he was not. Mrs. Moorfield placed her reticule upon the chair beside her. My niece wishes to ask about a maker's mark. Caution returned to Mr.
Ainsley's expression. A respectable tradesman survived by knowing the difference between discretion and concealment. On what object? Katherine met his eyes. A rose-cut diamond ring in old gold.
1 seed pearl is missing. The band carries initials that were filed down but not entirely removed. Below them is a small stamp. Mr. Ainsley was silent for a moment.
The ring you describe is presently in my custody for repair. Katherine felt her breath tighten, though her posture did not change.
Here? It was delivered this morning by Lord Somerton's valet. He lifted one hand before she could ask more.
I cannot show you property entrusted to me by another customer. I would not ask you to. His caution eased slightly.
What do you wish to know? Whether the mark is yours, and whether your records show when the ring was made and for whom? Mr. Ainsley studied her face.
Those are not harmless questions. Neither are false answers. Do you intend to make a claim upon the ring? No, it belongs to Lady Somerton now.
I want the truth of what it was before. The distinction appeared to matter to him.
He turned toward the locked cabinet at the rear of the shop, removed a heavy leather-bound volume, and carried it to the counter. My original order book remains in my possession, he said.
It does not leave this shop. It should not. He opened the book. The pages made a dry whisper beneath his fingers.
Each entry was written with precise economy. Date, customer, metal, stones, engraving, alteration. He turned to March 1815 and ran one finger down the page. 4th of March, he said.
A rose-cut diamond ring in old family gold, 1 central diamond, 12 seed pearls, commissioned by Mr. Cyril Bexley for Miss K. Chatterton.
Inside engraving, Casey Katherine heard her own initials spoken from a record created before anyone had reason to alter the past. For a moment, the shop seemed very still. Mrs.
Moorfield's hand settled gently against the edge of the counter. And the maker's mark? Katherine asked. Mine. Mr. Ainsley turned several pages. 20th of November, 1815.
Same ring returned by Mr. Bexley. Ordered reduced in size for Miss J. Chatterton. Existing initials to be softened, not removed. The instructions said softened.
I remember objecting that the band was too thin for deeper filing without weakening it. He looked over his spectacles. Mr. Bexley said the earlier inscription need not vanish completely.
It only needed to become difficult to read. Mrs. Moorfield drew a slow breath. The 8th of November, she said. Mr. Ainsley looked toward her.
Madam, on the 8th of November, Sir Malcolm asked Katherine to release Mr. Bexley. I was present. Judith's godmother's bequest had been confirmed on the 5th. Mr.
Ainsley glanced back at the book. 12 days later, the ring was altered. Yes, Katherine said. The chronology stood before her with a simplicity that made accusation unnecessary.
Judith's money became certain. Katherine was asked to surrender Cyril. The ring was resized and her initials were filed.
Cyril had now told the county she rejected him in January, 2 months before the ring had even been commissioned. Mr. Ainsley closed one hand over the edge of the book. I can prepare a signed
Extract of these entries. I would be grateful. The original remains here. Agreed. And the ring will be tightened and returned to Lady Somerton through the same servant who delivered it.
Katherine looked toward the closed door of the workroom. She did not need to see the ring again.
She had already held it beneath the July sun, returned it before witnesses, and learned what its surface had preserved. I have no claim upon it, she said, only upon the truth of my own name, Mr.
Ainsley's expression softened.
Then the extract will state precisely what my book states. Nothing more. Before Catherine left, he asked whether Lord Somerton knew she had come.
Not yet. He may ask. You needn't lie. I do not intend to. Nor do I expect you to risk your trade for my sake. Mr. Ainsley removed his spectacles and polished them slowly.
My trade depends upon records meaning what they say.
A Viscount cannot make March become January by speaking loudly enough. By the afternoon, the signed extract lay inside Catherine's locked writing desk at Moorfield House.
It recorded the commission on the 4th of March and the alteration on the 20th of November. The original order book remained in Ainsley's cabinet.
The ring remained in his professional custody until the tightening was complete. On the 10th of July, Cyril's valet signed the return receipt and carried the repaired ring back to Judith.
The band now fitted securely. The missing seed pearl remained missing. The filed initials remained beneath the gold.
Frederick called at Moorfield House later that afternoon, at an hour approved by Mrs. Moorfield. Catherine received him in the front drawing-room, with her aunt seated near the open windows.
Summer light lay across the ivory fan resting beside Catherine's hand. Frederick had already learned that she had gone to Ainsley's shop, but not what the records contained.
He waited until the first courtesies were complete. You found something, he said. Catherine did not ask how he knew.
Winchester was too small for a duke's interest in a goldsmith's safety to remain entirely invisible. The ring was commissioned for me on the 4th of March, 1815. Frederick's face became still.
And altered. For Judith on the 20th of November.
12 days after Father asked me to release Cyril. Somerton said you rejected him in January. Yes, then his date is impossible. It is. Catherine rose and crossed to the writing desk.
She unlocked it, removed the signed extract, and brought it to Frederick. He did not reach for it until she offered it. His eyes moved over the two entries. Does Mr.
Ainsley still possess the original book? Yes. It has not left his shop. And the ring? Returned to Judith today through Cyril's valet. Frederick handed the extract back.
You have been careful. I have been accused of wanting what is hers. I will not give anyone reason to say I took the ring or the book. You went without waiting for me. Catherine looked at him.
Did you expect otherwise? No. A quiet admiration entered his expression. I hoped for it. The answer warmed her more than praise would have done.
He did not call her brave as though courage had been bestowed upon her by his notice. He acknowledged that she had acted before he could.
Catherine returned the extract to the desk and locked it away. Mr. Ainsley may face pressure when Cyril learns I saw the records. He may. Frederick's jaw tightened.
I can ensure no tenant, supplier, or tradesman connected to Keldon Court participates in such pressure. He paused.
Only with your permission. Protecting his business is not the same as speaking for me. No, then you have it. Thank you. The words were unexpected.
Men of Frederick's rank rarely thanked others for allowing them to use power. He sat opposite her again, the formal distance between them intact.
There is another way to stop the gossip before it hardens further. Catherine heard the change in his voice. What way? Frederick held her gaze. I could announce that I am formally courting you.
Catherine did not answer at once. Frederick's offer remained between them, generous in appearance and dangerous in meaning. Mrs.
Moorfield sat near the open windows, her embroidery forgotten in her lap. Outside, a cart rolled along the Winchester street, and a church bell marked the quarter hour.
Within the drawing room, nothing moved except the curtain lifting in the summer air. Formally courting me, Catherine repeated.
Yes. Frederick's voice was steady, but the hand resting upon his knee had tightened. I could speak to Sir Malcolm. I could make my intentions known to the households that matter.
The gossip would lose much of its force. Because a duke had chosen me, his gaze sharpened.
Because the account being told about you is false. Those aren't the same reason. Frederick leaned back slightly. He did not retreat from the question.
No. Catherine looked toward the locked writing desk that held Ainsley's extract. The proof had been found through her own memory, her own decision, and her own journey into Winchester.
Yet a public courtship announced now would change what society saw. The dates would become less interesting than Frederick's rank.
Cyril's lie might be dismissed, not because Catherine had disproved it, but because a more powerful man had declared her worthy.
Do you want to court me? She asked. Or do you want to defeat Lord Somerton? Mrs. Moorfield's needle remained motionless.
Frederick's expression changed with the slow discomfort of a man who had expected honesty from himself and discovered a divided answer. Both, he said.
The admission hurt less than a polished denial would have done. Katherine lowered her eyes for a moment. Thank you for telling the truth. It does not make the offer less sincere. No.
It makes the danger clearer. He waited. Katherine rose and crossed to the window, needing the distance to think without mistaking gratitude for desire. Frederick had defended her choices.
He had asked permission before using his influence. He had seen her when her own family had chosen not to. None of that entitled him to transform her into evidence of his judgment. If you announce a
courtship now, she said, people will say Cyril was wrong to discard me because Westhaven wanted what Somerton failed to value. Frederick stood, though he remained several feet away.
Would that be entirely false? She turned. The story would still belong to men. The words struck him. Katherine continued before courage softened into apology.
I will not move from being the woman Lord Somerton rejected to being the woman a duke rescued. Let what I did stand first. Frederick looked toward the writing desk, then back at her.
You found the record. You left Chatterton Hall.
You refused their statement, yes, and my announcement would cover those acts with my title. It might. I intended it as protection. I know. He drew a slow breath.
That does not mean it would protect what matters. Katherine saw disappointment in his face, but no anger. More important, she saw recognition.
He had once allowed silence to preserve a false story because confrontation was difficult. Now he had nearly used public power to replace one false measure of her with another.
Then I withdraw the offer, he said. The simplicity of it left her unprepared. You do? I asked what you wanted.
I cannot punish you for answering. Something warm and painful moved through her chest. I did not say I wished you to stop calling. His eyes held hers. No? No, Mrs.
Moorfield resumed one careful stitch. Frederick's expression softened, though the restraint remained.
Would you permit private calls properly chaperoned? Yes. Without announcements? Yes. Without gifts appearing at the door? Catherine's mouth curved. Especially without gifts. And without.
My arranging invitations to force your company, you may continue to ask. I begin to understand that asking is the greater challenge, only for men accustomed to being answered before they
speak. A quiet laugh escaped him. The tension in the room eased, but it did not disappear. It changed. The distance between them no longer felt imposed by rank or fear.
It had become a choice they were both honoring. Frederick bowed to Mrs. Moorfield, then to Katherine. I will call again if I may on Monday. You may. At the door he paused.
Miss Chatterton, Your Grace, I am glad you refused me. Katherine lifted one brow. That is an alarming foundation for courtship. Perhaps.
But I would rather be refused honestly than accepted for the wrong reason. When he had gone, Mrs. Moorfield set down her embroidery. You care for him. Katherine looked at the closed door.
I am beginning to, and that frightens you. No. She touched the edge of the writing desk. What frightens me is how easy it would be to mistake relief for love. Mrs. Moorfield nodded.
Then you are wise to wait until you can tell the difference. Frederick called twice over the next 6 days, first on the 14th and again on the 18th of July.
Both visits occurred in daylight, Mrs.
Moorfield remained present, and on the second occasion Lady Eleanor joined them for tea before withdrawing to the far end of the room. With a volume of sermons she made no convincing attempt to read.
Frederick did not ask about Cyril during the first call.
He spoke instead of Keldon Court, of the tenant cottages being repaired before autumn, and of an old steward who refused to admit that his eyesight had worsened.
Katherine asked questions no one at Chatterton Hall had considered suitable for her. How were rents adjusted after a poor harvest?
Did Frederick visit the smaller farms himself or rely entirely upon agents? What happened when duty to an estate conflicted with profit?
He answered without pretending rank, made every decision simple. On the second call, they spoke of books. Katherine learned that he disliked sentimental poetry when it demanded suffering without consequence, yet carried a worn volume of Cowper on journeys.
Frederick learned that she had catalogued half the Chatterton library because no one else knew where the estate records had been placed. Your father relied upon you, he said.
He relied upon what I would repair without claiming credit. That is not the same thing. No, she poured tea.
But usefulness can resemble affection when one has not been offered much of either.
Frederick's face tightened. He did not insult Sir Malcolm to comfort her.
At Keldon, I have sometimes confused obedience with loyalty, he said.
The distinction becomes obvious only after someone refuses. Were you angry when I refused you? For one moment, Catherine looked up. His honesty had become one of the dangers she trusted most.
Why? Because I had imagined the announcement would solve everything.
Your answer required me to admit I wanted the satisfaction of solving it. And now? Now I would prefer to know you when there is nothing to defeat. The room seemed quieter.
Lady Eleanor turned a page without looking up. Mrs. Moorfield had left briefly to speak with the housekeeper, though the open door preserved propriety. Frederick stood near the window.
Catherine joined him, keeping a careful distance that felt increasingly less careful. On the street below, a flower seller called to passing ladies.
Sunlight touched the silver at Frederick's temples. You remember how I take tea, Catherine said. You notice when I am pretending not to dislike something. That is not difficult. You become
excessively polite. A dangerous habit. I have several. He looked at her then, not as the Duke who had crossed a gallery, nor as the man determined to correct an injustice, but as someone asking
a question he did not trust himself to speak. Catherine felt the answer rise in her body before it reached her thoughts. Frederick moved one step closer. He did not touch her.
The space between them narrowed until she could see the faint tension at the corner of his mouth. He waited. Catherine's breath caught. She wanted him to kiss her.
She also wanted the wanting to belong entirely to the present, not to gratitude, rescue, or the ache of being chosen after humiliation. Not yet, she whispered. Frederick stopped.
Disappointment passed openly across his face. He did not hide it quickly enough to make the moment painless, and Catherine was grateful for that too. Then he stepped back. Not yet, he repeated.
No coldness entered his voice. No punishment followed. Mrs. Moorfield returned as a footman appeared in the doorway carrying a silver salver.
Upon it lay a cream-colored invitation sealed with the Somerton crest. Catherine broke the seal. Judith invited Mrs.
Moorfield and Catherine to a reception at Somerton House on the 25th of July.
After supper, Lady Somerton intended to offer a toast, thanking her sister for having understood, with admirable grace, that Cyril and Judith had always been destined for one another.
Frederick read Catherine's face. You need not go. If I stay away, Judith will call it consent. Then I will attend. Yes. Catherine folded the invitation once.
But you will not answer for me. I know. She met his eyes. Stand close enough that I know you stayed, far enough that they hear me first.
Sir Malcolm's letter arrived on the 19th of July, written in the formal hand he used when affection might weaken an instruction.
Catherine read it at the breakfast table in Moorfield House, while Mrs. Moorfield poured coffee and pretended not to watch her face.
Her father did not apologize for asking her to leave Chatterton Hall. He did not mention Cyril's impossible January date, or the entries in Mr. Ainsley's order book.
He wrote only that Judith's reception on the 25th would be crowded, that emotions remained unsettled, and that Catherine's absence would be understood as discretion.
The sentence carried the same old bargain beneath more polished language. Stay silent, and others will call the silence virtue. Catherine folded the letter. He wants me not to attend, Mrs.
Moorfield set down the coffee pot. Will you answer? Yes. What will you say? Catherine looked toward the locked writing desk where Ainsley's signed extract remained beneath her personal correspondence.
That I shall be there. Sir Malcolm's second letter came 2 days later. This one warned that Judith had invited many of the families present at the wedding breakfast and the garden party.
Catherine understood the significance before he explained it.
The same people who had heard that she arranged Frederick's attention rejected Cyril for uncertain prospects, and tried to keep Judith's ring would now be gathered beneath Judith's roof.
If Catherine remained absent while her sister publicly thanked her for surrendering Cyril, silence would become agreement in every drawing room that mattered. Cyril had selected the audience.
Judith had selected the words. They had even selected the moment.
The toast would follow supper, when leaving the room would be conspicuous, and interrupting a hostess would be judged more harshly than any falsehood she spoke.
It is not an invitation, Catherine said when Frederick called on the 22nd. It is a room prepared for my consent. He stood near the mantel while Mrs.
Moorfield and Lady Eleanor occupied the sofa.
The presence of both women satisfied propriety, though neither pretended the visit concerned ordinary courtship.
Then we should understand precisely what you intend, Frederick said, not what I intend for you. Catherine appreciated the correction. It came without performance.
I will let Judith begin, she said. If I interrupt before she makes the claim, she will say I imagined an insult. And once she says it, Lady Eleanor asked,
I will ask Cyril to repeat the date. Mrs. Morfield's expression tightened. Before everyone? He gave January before witnesses.
He may either repeat it, or explain why it has changed. Frederick studied her. Ainsley's original book remains in Winchester. For now. The next morning, Catherine and Mrs.
Morfield walked to the goldsmith's shop. Mr. Ainsley received them in the rear office rather than before customers.
The original order book remained in the locked cabinet where Catherine had last seen it. The ring was no longer there.
It had been returned to Judith on the 10th through Cyril's valet, exactly as the receipt recorded. Catherine did not ask to see that receipt again.
The dates that mattered were already written elsewhere. I have been invited to Somerton House, she said. Lady Somerton intends to make a public statement about the history of the ring. Mr.
Ainsley removed his spectacles.
And you wish me to contradict her? I wish you to state what your own book states if the entry is challenged. The original does not leave my custody. It must not. He looked toward Mrs.
Morfield, then back to Catherine. If I attend, I will carry it myself. It will remain in a locked case until I am asked to open it. I will answer only for my entries and workmanship. That is all.
I ask. Lord Somerton may take offense. He may. And you understand that I cannot speak to what was promised privately between you. You need not. March and November are enough, Mr.
Ainsley nodded slowly. Then I shall come. He selected a dark leather case from a shelf, tested the lock, and placed it beside the cabinet. No clerk would transport the book.
No servant would be responsible for it. Ainsley would bring it to Somerton House and carry it back to Winchester himself.
Before Catherine left, he said, Miss Chatterton, records are useful because they do not become frightened when important men disapprove of them. Catherine met his eyes. People must still be
willing to read them aloud. Then we must both do our part. On the morning of the 25th, Catherine removed the signed extract from her locked writing desk and placed it inside her reticule.
She did not intend to use it while Ainsley's original book was present, but she would not leave her only copy behind.
Her mother's ivory fan lay beside it, the moonlit garden faded upon the silk, and the cracked outer guard firm beneath her fingers. Mrs. Morfield watched her close the reticule.
You needn't carry the fan if it makes you feel you must hide. It does not. Catherine opened it once, then closed it.
Not anymore. Frederick arrived shortly before their departure, not to escort them from Winchester, but to confirm the role Catherine had assigned him.
His carriage would leave separately from Keldon Court. Lady Eleanor would meet Catherine and Mrs. Morfield at Somerton House.
Nothing in their arrival would allow Cyril to say the Duke had carried Catherine into the confrontation. I will not speak before you, Frederick said. I will not present the evidence, and I will
not answer a question addressed to you. And if Cyril interrupts, I will require him to allow you to finish. If Judith orders me to leave, I will remind her that she invited you to hear a
toast spoken in your name. Catherine held his gaze. And if the room turns against me? His expression altered, not with anger, but with controlled force.
Then I will remain where you told me to stand. Close enough that I know you stayed. Far enough that they hear you first. He remembered the words exactly.
Catherine felt the same warmth that had unsettled her at Moorfield House, but now it carried less fear. Frederick was not offering victory. He was offering steadiness. "Thank you," she said.
"Not yet," he replied. "Thank me when I have done it properly." The journey from Winchester to Somerton House took nearly 3 hours. Catherine and Mrs.
Moorfield traveled in daylight through high summer fields, stopping only once to rest the horses. Neither woman spoke much during the final miles. The signed extract remained in Catherine's reticule.
Ainsley's original book traveled in another carriage under his own hand. The ring, tightened and secure, remained with Judith.
Somerton House stood beyond iron gates, and a long approach lined with clipped yews. Lamps had already been lit in the entrance hall, though daylight remained outside.
Lady Eleanor met them near the foot of the staircase. His Grace has arrived from Keldon, she said. Mr. Ainsley is in the anteroom with his case. No one has asked him to open it. Katherine nodded.
Good. Frederick stood across the drawing room speaking with an elderly baronet. He did not cross immediately. He merely looked at Katherine and inclined his head. Close enough. Far enough.
Judith received guests beside Cyril beneath a portrait of a former Viscount Somerton. She wore silver-gray silk and the rose-cut ring beside her wedding band. The repair had done its work.
The ring no longer shifted upon her finger. The missing seed pearl remained a small dark absence in the border. Judith extended that hand as Katherine approached.
You came. You invited me. I feared you might prefer discretion. So did Father. Sir Malcolm stood several yards away near Lady Wexham. He did not join them.
His separation from Judith was slight but visible, the posture of a man who had begun to understand that neutrality no longer concealed participation. Cyril offered Katherine a shallow bow.
I hope tonight may end the unpleasantness. That depends upon what is said. His eyes narrowed.
Judith intends only gratitude. Then truth should not disturb it. Supper passed with strained elegance. Lady Wexham avoided Katherine's gaze until the second course. Mrs.
Ellison looked at her openly and offered a quiet greeting. Cyril spoke often and ate little.
Judith touched the ring whenever conversation drifted toward the wedding, as though reassurance could be summoned through gold. Frederick remained at a proper distance.
Once, when Cyril attempted to draw him into a discussion of estate roads, Frederick answered with civility and nothing more.
The proposed cooperation between Keldon and Somerton had not yet been publicly withdrawn. Katherine understood that he was waiting until truth had been established by something stronger than rank.
After supper, servants cleared the central tables and brought wine. No guest could leave without being noticed. Mr.
Ainsley remained beyond the drawing-room doors in the anteroom, the locked leather case beside him. Katherine felt the signed extract against the side of her reticule. Mrs.
Moorfield stood to her left. Lady Eleanor stood several paces beyond.
Frederick took his place where Katherine had asked him to be, not beside her, but near enough that Cyril could not silence her without confronting him. Judith moved to the center of the room. The tightened ring flashed as she raised her glass. Conversation faded. Cyril watched Katherine rather than his wife. Sir Malcolm lowered his eyes.
Judith smiled at the guests who had heard every version of the story except Katherine's. To my sister, she began, who understood that Cyril and I were always meant to be.
Katherine rose before the first glass could be lifted. The movement was quiet, yet it stopped the toast more effectively than a shout. Judith's smile faltered.
Cyril's hand tightened around the stem of his wineglass.
Katherine held her mother's ivory fan closed at her side and looked first at her sister, then at the guests who had heard every version of her history except the one she had chosen to tell.
I cannot drink to words spoken in my name when I have never agreed to them, she said. Judith lowered her glass by an inch.
This is meant kindly. Then kindness will not suffer from the truth. A murmur moved through the room. Sir Malcolm lifted his head at last. Frederick remained where Katherine had asked him to stand, close enough that she could feel the steadiness of his presence, far enough that no one could mistake his silence for control.
Katherine turned to Cyril. At the garden party, you said I ended our understanding in January of 1815. Cyril's expression remained composed.
I said it ended early in the year. You said January. Lady Wexham shifted uneasily. Mrs. Ellison looked directly at Cyril. Several guests who had been present on the lawn exchanged glances.
Katherine continued. Are you withdrawing that date? Cyril saw the trap. I may have spoken approximately. Then give us the exact month now. Judith looked at him.
Cyril, this is absurd, he said. Private matters are rarely remembered by the calendar. You remembered January clearly enough when it made me appear mercenary. Katherine's voice did not rise.
Was it January? He glanced toward Frederick, perhaps expecting the Duke to intervene, but Frederick said nothing. The silence forced Cyril back toward the question. Yes, he said at last.
January. Katherine turned to Judith. Will you remove the ring? Judith's hand closed instantly. No, I am not asking for it. It belongs to me. I have said that from the beginning.
Ownership is not the question. Judith's face had gone pale beneath the candlelight. You have no right to inspect my jewelry before my guests. Lady Eleanor stepped forward.
I will inspect it if you prefer. Judith looked from Katherine to Frederick, then to the faces around her. Refusal had begun to look more dangerous than compliance.
With stiff fingers, she pulled the ring over the tightened knuckle and held it out. Lady Eleanor accepted it carefully. She turned the band toward the light. "There are letters inside," she said.
"Not complete. A curve that appears to be a K, and part of a C." Cyril gave a dismissive laugh. "Old marks."
The gold has been to my family for years. There is also a maker's stamp beneath them, Lady Eleanor said. Ainsley. Catherine looked toward the drawing room doors. Mr.
Ainsley is waiting in the anteroom. Judith stared at her.
You brought a tradesman into my house to shame me. I asked a goldsmith to answer for his own work. Cyril moved as if to block the doorway.
Frederick spoke then, his first words since Catherine had risen. "Lord Somerton, Miss Chatterton has not finished." The statement was quiet.
It carried the full weight of rank without using it to make the argument. Cyril stopped. A footman admitted Mr. Ainsley, who entered carrying the locked leather case in both hands.
He bowed to the company, then placed the case upon a side table. The original order book remains in my custody, he said.
I have brought it only to confirm entries made in my shop. He unlocked the case, removed the heavy volume, and opened it to the marked page. Catherine did not reach into her reticule.
The signed extract remained there, unnecessary, while the original stood before them. Mr. Ainsley adjusted his spectacles. On the 4th of March, 1815, Mr.
Cyril Bexley commissioned a rose-cut diamond ring in old family gold for Miss K. Chatterton. The interior engraving was KC. No one moved.
Judith looked at Cyril as though the floor between them had shifted. Ainsley turned several pages. On the 20th of November, 1815, the same ring was returned for reduction in size for Miss J.
Chatterton. The earlier initials were ordered softened. Lady Eleanor looked down at the ring in her palm.
Then it could not have marked an understanding ended in January. No, my lady, Ainsley said. The ring had not yet been commissioned. Cyril's face hardened.
Records can be mistaken. Ainsley met his gaze without insolence. Not these entries, my lord. I made both myself. Mrs. Moorfield stepped forward.
And on the 8th of November, Sir Malcolm asked Catherine to release Mr. Bexley. I was present. Sir Malcolm's mouth tightened.
Anne, you heard only part of a difficult family discussion. I heard you say Judith's bequest had changed what was practical. Every eye turned toward him.
Sir Malcolm looked suddenly older, yet pride held him upright. A family in our position must sometimes make painful decisions.
Estates, marriages, and futures cannot be governed by sentiment alone. Catherine faced him. What necessity required you to make me a liar? He flinched.
I could endure as though it belonged to you. Sir Malcolm looked toward Judith, whose hand remained empty, and then towards Cyril, who no longer attempted concern.
The room offered him no private corner in which to hide the truth behind duty. His shoulders lowered. Judith's bequest was confirmed on the 5th of November, he said.
It made a marriage to her more advantageous. Somerton's prospects were uncertain, and I believed the connection would secure both households. Judith stared at him.
Father, he continued with visible effort, I asked Catherine to release him on the 8th.
I believed she would bear it with less difficulty than Judith would bear disappointment. Catherine felt the wound of those words, but she did not look away.
And afterward? Sir Malcolm's eyes closed briefly. I allowed others to say the decision had been yours. A hush settled over the room.
Judith took the ring back from Lady Eleanor, but she did not put it on. I knew it had been Catherine's, she said. The admission came thinly.
Cyril said marriage made the past irrelevant. You knew her initials were inside? Mrs. Ellison asked. Judith's fingers closed around the gold.
I knew they had been removed. Softened, Catherine said, not removed. Judith looked at Cyril.
Did you choose me because of the bequest? He exhaled in irritation, as if her question embarrassed him more than the evidence did. Do not be foolish. Marriages of our rank are practical.
You wanted me. I required stability, and the arrangement benefited everyone. Did you love me? Judith whispered. Cyril's expression hardened.
This is hardly the time for childish questions. The cruelty in his answer struck Judith more deeply than accusation could have done.
For the first time, she saw that triumph had not made her beloved. It had only made her useful. She turned toward Catherine with a desperate, wounded anger. You wanted this. No, Catherine said.
I wanted my name returned to me.
What you do with the truth is now your responsibility." Judith's eyes filled, but Katherine did not cross the room to comfort her.
That burden no longer belonged to the sister who had been required to absorb every consequence. She looked instead at the gathered guests. "I did not reject Lord Somerton in January."
I did not pursue him after his marriage. I did not attempt to steal Lady Somerton's ring. I caught it when it fell, returned it before witnesses, and asked why a ring made for me in March had been used to support a story that ended in January.
You now have the answer. Only when Katherine sat did Frederick step forward. "Miss Chatterton has established the truth without assistance from me," he said. "What follows concerns my own household."
Lord and Lady Somerton will not be received at Keldon Court until the accusations against Miss Chatterton are formally withdrawn.
Any proposed cooperation between the Somerton and Keldon estates is ended. My tenants, suppliers, and tradesmen will not be used to punish Mr.
Ainsley for maintaining honest records. Cyril's face darkened. "You would end business over a family disagreement?" "No," Frederick said.
"Over dishonesty." Sir Malcolm moved to the center of the room. "I must correct what I allowed to be said. Katherine did not reject Somerton for uncertain prospects."
She did not arrange his Grace's attention. She did not leave Chatterton Hall because of improper conduct. She left because I made her residence dependent upon silence. Lady Wexham lowered her gaze.
Mrs. Ellison gave Catherine the smallest nod. No applause followed. Catherine was grateful. Truth did not require celebration from those who had helped make it necessary. Mr. Ainsley closed the order book, returned it to the leather case, and locked it. Lady Eleanor gave the ring back to Judith, who slid it onto her finger beside the wedding band.
The tightened gold held firmly. The missing seed pearl remained dark against her skin. Frederick came to Catherine only after the room had begun to breathe again.
"You owe me no gratitude for the first dance," he said. "I know. May I ask for a second?" Catherine looked at him. He had kept his distance.
He had allowed her voice to reach the room before his title did. She closed her mother's fan and placed it in Mrs. Morfield's hands. "Yes." The musicians began quietly near the far wall.
Frederick offered his hand. Catherine accepted, and they moved together while the guests who had once watched her humiliation now watched her choose. He did not hold her as though he had won her.
He held her as though the answer remained hers throughout the dance. When it ended, he returned her to Mrs. Morfield without asking for anything more.
Her aunt placed the ivory fan back into Catherine's hand. Before leaving Somerton House, Catherine watched Mr. Ainsley carry the locked case to his own carriage for the return journey to Winchester.
Judith still possessed the ring. Catherine still possessed the signed extract in her reticule. Frederick possessed no claim upon her beyond the next invitation she chose to accept. For the first time, nothing had been taken from Catherine in order to restore what was hers.
In the weeks after the reception at Somerton House, truth moved more slowly than gossip had done, but it traveled farther.
Sir Malcolm sent written corrections to every household whose occupants had heard the false account, including Lady Wexham, Mrs.
Ellison, and the families present at the wedding breakfast and garden party. His letters stated that Catherine had not rejected Cyril Bexley because his prospects were uncertain, had not arranged the
Duke of Westhaven's attention, had not attempted to reclaim Judith's ring, and had not left Chatterton Hall because of improper behavior.
He wrote that she had departed because he had made her continued residence depend upon silence.
The confession did not restore the years that had been taken from her, but it prevented him from hiding behind confusion. A second letter came privately to Moorfield House.
In it, Sir Malcolm acknowledged that he had treated Catherine's endurance as a family resource, something to be spent whenever Judith's happiness or the Chatterton name appeared threatened.
He arranged for income due from Catherine's late mother's property to be paid directly to her without condition and without requiring her return to Chatterton Hall.
Catherine read the letter twice before placing it in her locked writing desk beside Mr. Ainsley's signed extract. "Will you answer him?" Mrs. Morfield asked.
"Yes." "Will you forgive him?" Catherine looked toward the small Winchester garden beyond the window. "Not because he has finally described what he did. No. But I may believe he has changed if he
continues to act differently when there is no audience.
Her reply thanked Sir Malcolm for correcting the public falsehoods and accepting responsibility for the income that was hers.
She did not promise to return. She did not say the past was forgotten. She wrote that reconciliation, if it came, would depend upon conduct rather than regret.
Judith's retraction arrived in August, formal and stiffly composed.
She admitted that Katherine had not rejected Cyril in January, had not attempted to steal the ring at the garden party, and had not arranged Frederick's attention at the wedding.
She did not apologize for wearing the ring, or for knowing whose initials had once been inside it. Katherine answered with courtesy and nothing more. Judith remained Lady Somerton.
Cyril remained her husband. The rose-cut ring remained upon her hand, tightened securely, the missing seed pearl still dark in its border, and the softened initials still beneath the gold.
Katherine never asked to see it again. Cyril offered no apology at all.
He lost the hospitality of Keldon Court, Frederick's personal patronage, and the proposed cooperation between the Somerton and Keldon estates.
Invitations that once arrived automatically became less frequent. None of those consequences touched his title or legal rights.
They simply denied him the protection of pretending dishonesty carried no cost. Frederick, meanwhile, kept the promise he had never formally made.
He courted Katherine without announcement, spectacle, or gifts displayed upon her doorstep.
He called at Moorfield House in proper hours, took chaperoned drives with her through the country beyond Winchester, and invited Mrs.
Moorfield and Lady Eleanor to small dinners at Keldon Court, where no one mentioned Cyril unless Katherine chose to. He did not turn every conversation toward the injustice he had helped expose. He spoke of estate matters, books, old friendships, parliamentary obligations, and the habits that had made him too comfortable with silence.
Katherine disagreed with him often enough to discover that he did not mistake agreement for affection.
Once, when he proposed replacing a tenant steward who had concealed poor accounts, Katherine asked whether dismissal would punish the man's daughters more severely than the man.
Frederick argued that responsibility required consequence. Katherine argued that consequence without proportion was merely power. They did not settle the question that evening.
2 days later, he returned and told her he had dismissed the steward from authority, but arranged a smaller pension that could not be controlled by him. You were right, he said.
Not entirely. Enough to improve the decision. It was then Katherine understood that he valued her judgment even when it opposed his own.
By October, nearly 3 months had passed since the reception. Frederick went to Chatterton Hall and asked Sir Malcolm for his blessing as a courtesy, not as permission Katherine required.
Her answer is hers, he said.
I am asking whether, if she gives it, you will welcome the choice without claiming to have made it possible. Sir Malcolm, chastened enough to hear the distinction, said he would.
Frederick proposed 2 days later in the front drawing-room at Moorfield House, with Mrs. Moorfield present near the window, and Lady Eleanor occupied at the writing-table.
He did not kneel until Katherine had set down her teacup and given him her full attention. I do not wish to marry you because Somerton failed to value you, he said.
I do not wish to marry you because society owes you a correction. I wish to marry you because you see clearly, even when clarity is inconvenient.
Because you refused me when accepting would have been easier. Because you have never allowed gratitude to imitate love. Katherine's throat tightened. Frederick held her gaze. I love you.
I would like a life in which you may disagree with me, choose beside me, and never be required to disappear for my comfort. Will you marry me? She did not answer at once.
The pause was not uncertainty about him. It was a final act of honesty toward herself.
She asked whether the joy rising within her came from rescue, gratitude, rank, or the relief of having been publicly restored. It did not.
She had known Frederick after the scandal, in rooms where no one watched, through disagreements that brought no applause, and in quiet hours where his restraint had asked nothing of her dignity.
Yes, she said. His breath left him in a way that made the Duke disappear and the man remain. Yes, yes, Frederick, I'll marry you. Only then did he take her hand.
The new ring he gave her was not elaborate. It held a single clear stone in a simple gold setting chosen for her, rather than inherited from another promise.
Their marriage settlement protected Katherine's maternal property and provided a personal allowance under her own control. The banns were read on 3 successive Sundays.
On the 24th of October, 1817,
Catherine returned to the parish church, where she had once sat in the second pew, and watched Judith sign another woman's future into the register.
This time the church doors opened for her. She walked beside Sir Malcolm because she chose to allow it, not because forgiveness had erased memory. At the altar, Frederick waited without triumph.
When Catherine placed her hand in his, no one answered for her. She spoke each vow in a steady voice and became Duchess of Westhaven only after she had first been entirely Catherine.
A few days later, beneath the copper and gold leaves at Keldon Court, she and Frederick carried a small picnic beyond the formal gardens to a quiet stretch of grass beneath the beech trees.
No guests followed, no musicians waited. Catherine placed her mother's ivory fan open upon the blanket. The moonlit garden painted across its silk faced the autumn sky.
The cracked guard remained unrepaired. Frederick had once offered to send it to a restorer, but Catherine had declined.
Not every crack must be hidden for a thing to remain beautiful, she had told him. Now he sat beside her, watching leaves turn slowly in the wind.
After a while, he began to hum the tune of their first dance. He missed the rhythm badly enough that Catherine laughed.
That is not how it went. I remember the important part, which was, he rose and bowed with exaggerated formality.
Your Grace, may I have this dance? Catherine looked around at the empty grass, the abandoned cups, and the fan lying open where it concealed nothing. There was no room waiting to judge her answer.
No sister watching to measure defeat. No father depending upon her silence. Frederick extended his hand and waited. Catherine stood before taking it.
Then, instead of allowing him to close the distance, she stepped forward and offered her hand first. They danced without music, imperfectly and without witnesses, turning beneath the autumn branches,
while the open fan rested upon the grass, its cracks still visible and its painted garden lifted toward the light.